Welcome into I Said What I Said. I'm Brad Wakai. That's Tyson Gentry. This is our college football week 11 reaction episode. And boy, Tyson, we got a lot to get into today. Not last weekend was last weekend. This weekend is but we got a lot to discuss in between. I can't wait to get into it. We just had the college football playoff rankings drop. We'll have a whole segment on that where we run through it. So I'm excited, man. We're getting to crunch time here.
Yeah, and look at us just accidentally timing a show as soon as the college football playoff rankings come out. Sometimes we get some stuff right.
All right, let's get right into it. You know how we do it, folks.
I told you so.
I got to pat myself on the back because Notre Dame just completely dismantled Florida State in just an embarrassing fashion, completely smoking them. And Tyson, I can only take a little bit of half credit here. Well, maybe I can take full credit because I have repented on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And I have said I've made a mistake with my criticism of Marcus Freeman. And I may have been a little too harsh after losing to Texas A&M, who's still hanging around and competing. And it's a new Texas A&M team with Mike Elko and not snake oil salesman Jimbo Fisher. So that doesn't look as bad of a loss now for Notre Dame. And Tyson, since then, or I'm sorry, I guess they beat since Northern Illinois, excuse me. But since that game, they have played really good football. The defense is flying around. Riley Leonard, who we're kind of like, oh boy, is he maybe hung
I love him, dude. I love him.
Woo. It's now he's getting some love from Cowherd as the NFL guy. I'm like, what's happening here?
I love Riley Leonard. Riley Leonard is like the most college football quarterback in the country right now. And this is a country that E.J. Warner exists in.
Yeah, man. So my mistake. They beat Texas A&M. I don't know what I was thinking there, but that Northern Illinois loss. That's what we were burying them. We're like, no way. I mean, this could be off the rails. Marcus Freeman's in trouble, and maybe been a little overzealous on that prediction. But I knew they were going to pound Florida State. Florida State is in big trouble. Is Norvell going to get canned, Tyson? I mean, what do you think?
Well, they have this isn't a joke. This is not an exaggeration. They have the lowest points per game in the entire country right now. So he fired the offensive coordinator, O-line coach, receivers coach, all that stuff because, for the last 9 weeks, it was really just a trial run for those guys when they were scoring 9 points a game, and now it's becoming an issue. I don't know. I mean, I got on here. I called Marcus Freeman. I called him a dumbass or an asshole or something after they lost to Northern Illinois because of his press conference. He might have been the best hire from that cycle. Like, he's got a better record right now than Brian Kelly, than Brent Venables, than Lincoln Riley. And you had A&M on the brain because this is 1 year to the day from when Jimbo Fisher was fired at Texas A&M, and I think the heads might start to roll. We'll get into that later here maybe. But my I told you so this week, Brad. UCLA and Iowa was a sicko's paradise. I mean, it was just perfect. It was UCLA out Iowa. Both teams have 3 turnovers. There's 6 total turnovers in the game. I think 2 or 3 of them came in the other team's end zone. 1 or 2 that I can think of off the top of my head, like the fumble from UCLA came on a drive when Iowa just takes the football away. This game was perfect. And shout out to TJ Harden, 125 yards on the ground. UCLA punched him in the face. We've been saying all year that the home dogs are barking when it comes to Friday nights, and they stood up and they barked again. But, Brad, how can you expect a Big Ten team to compete with the physicality of these California boys?
I thought Deshaun Foster has done a good job, actually, for UCLA. I mean, this is a disaster coming in, and got to give him a lot of credit. I mean, he had a just horrendous opening press conference at Big Ten Media Days. Like, it's laughable just how bad that was. But, this thing was a disaster, had disaster written all over it, and he took the job, and he stood up like a man and accepted the criticism from the press conference that I made a mistake and didn't do a good job, and he's coaching his ass off on the sideline. You got to commend that for that. So I was actually happy to see UCLA win this game because I'm just so sick of this Iowa thing, man. Like, Kirk Ferentz, nice guy, and he's done a great job with this program. Can we just be done with this Iowa thing? It's a disgrace. Let's get into the next thing.
I've made a huge mistake. Hand up.
And the reason why I use disgrace, Tyson, because I'm a little upset with myself. Because I keep backing Tennessee, and they're just not elite, and I'm coming to terms with it now. I'm finally coming to terms. No more. The Josh Heupel thing, man. Is it just a one-hit wonder with Hendon Hooker where that was like truly the best we were going to get? And that's being hyperbolic. I don't want to go from one thing to another here. because that's not what we like to do. We don't like to overreact. But Tyson, this is supposed to be you got the Joe Milton. He couldn't run this offense last year. You bring in Nico Imaleva, and this was supposed to be just Guns N' Roses and boom, 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 explosive all over the place. It was that against Furman or Samford or some other of these way low-level schools. When you're an SEC talent, they step up in class. This thing's just off the rails. Like, it just doesn't – it looks clunky. They hadn't scored in, the first half in, 4 weeks? How is that even possible? It's a disgrace, truly, for this much talent on that offense to not score in the first half. This guy's supposed to be a genius offensive mind. I'm not seeing wide receivers schemed open, and when they are open, the quarterback is missing them. But this looks completely different from when Hendon Hooker was rolling. And, yes, this defense is good, and probably the best defense. Tyson are wasting it with the offense. What is happening here?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll get into them a little bit with the college football playoff talk, but I'm a little bit kind of more, and we're both Nico guys, but I put more of the blame on him than it seems that you are right now. I think he's missing a ton. That's kind of what happens when you get an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old in here to run the game. So, maybe we were a little bit too high on him. Brad, my hand up isn't about a 19-year-old. It's about a guy that's been around the block 7 times by now. Georgia just doesn't have the juice, man. You were talking about you didn't want you can finally say Tennessee's not elite. I've been backing Georgia all season long. I thought they were going to win the national championship before the year started. I thought they were going to beat everybody. I thought this was a Kirby revenge tour, and the skill position players were just going to be too good, and the defense is going to be too good. Brad, the defense is soft. Defense is, they showed up against Texas, and they showed up in the second half against Alabama, and they hammered Cade Klubnik. Outside of that, it's not been a great defensive performance. Carson Beck stinks again. Just it's like he's closing his eyes on some of these. It's to the point where he went from consensus number 1 overall pick in the draft to this guy's worse than Stetson Bennett. And I don't know if that's going to translate to the next level, but in the college game, he's absolutely a worse player than Stetson Bennett was at Georgia. This team is just no national championship hopes. I know that they're going to stick around here. Kirby's 1-2 against. So I think he's got a losing record against Bama, LSU, and Ole Miss, which is pretty funny for a team that's consecutively racking up national championship trips and wins here to be losing to LSU and Ole Miss. But maybe they just have his number. That game aside, they haven't looked good outside of really 2 halves of football for the last 2 months.
I'm kind of done with the Kirby Smart thing, dude. Like, this guy walks around, and here's the difference. At least
I don't think he's an NIL guy, dude. I think he's a recruiter guy. He can walk into a high school gym and he can get you to show up, but I don't know if he's getting these 20-year-olds to buy into this.
That's okay. So that's kind of where I'm leaning towards right now. Because when it was the Nick Saban thing, and it was the most dominant program in the sport, people didn't like Nick Saban because he just knew that his team was better, and they just were, right? Like, they were just better. But at least that program operated with an air of pride, or we're going to perform better.
Perfection.
Yeah, and then this Georgia thing is, I mean, I've used off the rails a couple of times here, so I don't want to keep using that because it's diminishing that. Tyson, first of all, you got the car thing, the speeding and the drunk driving. I'm not even talking about the reckless driving death, which I don't really want to touch on, but that's just an aspect of it. And then you have it continuing to go on down there. So I don't know what that says about where the state of the program is, the type of players they're going after. This is a little bit too in the weeds for really what I know about, but it's just highlighting the fact that I think not that Kirby's lost control. There's a part of me that says Kirby's just kind of allowing it to happen because of the way that he acts. After they beat Texas, the way that he handled that press conference, the way that he handled losing in the SEC championship and being left out of the college football playoff. No, we're better. We deserve this. We deserve. How about you win the big games then? And I know they did that a couple years ago. They went 2 times in a row, undefeated. That's super impressive. But when we're talking about the current state of college football, like you said, this team doesn't have juice. This program has lost the juice that they have had. Is it because that they've lost those elite players? The NIL has changed things. Has Kirby changed? I don't know. He seems to think that they deserve a lot more than they're showing on the field, Tyson, and it's kind of rubbing me the wrong way.
And this thing has been coming for a while, not the Kirby Smart, meltdown, so to speak, but the overall fact of the matter, and this is something you and I have talked about kind of tongue-in-cheek for 2 years, the Big Ten's here, and they're better than you. And I'm talking to the whole SEC right now, from top to bottom. 1 through 17, the Big Ten has better teams. It's been something that's been brewing, because for a while it was like, yes, they're both going to be super physical and they're going to run and punch each other in the face. But the SEC just had better athletes over and over and over and over again. So when those games happened, it was 42-14. Ohio State doesn't deserve to be on the field with Florida or LSU or Alabama or Georgia or whoever it was. And now I don't think, Brad, that there's a team in the SEC that you're going to take on neutral as a favorite over the top 4 teams in the Big Ten.
Interesting. I like that. All right, Tyson, let's keep rolling along here. This one will be, I think you'll like the one that I'm picking.
Donkey of the day.
Oh, baby. Mario Cristobal. This one was saved up and revved up, and we knew at some point we were going to have to pull him out for Donkey of the Day. Now, I thought it was going to be Tyson. He's got a way funnier one, but this team should have 4 losses, the Miami Hurricanes, honestly. And we're going to get into the college football playoff rankings. They are the most fugazi team that's in the top 10. We saw that this week. I'm glad that Georgia Tech won. I'm glad that we could put an end to the Cam Ward Heisman nonsense. Like, he's been great. But this team should have 4 losses. The Virginia Tech game, whatever you think about the Hail Mary, they had to have a miraculous comeback. They followed that up with needing a miraculous comeback against Cal. And then you finally get pushed around. You finally get bodied a little bit by Georgia Tech. Had no answer in the physical run game. This is a Georgia Tech team who lost their starting quarterback for the first half. Lost their starting running back. And Miami had no answers. You're supposed to be a national championship contender? Cam Ward's supposed to be a Heisman Trophy favorite? Oh, boy, another drop ball from Miami. Now, they could still compete. We'll get into it. I don't think so. I think the wheels are finally coming off the bus here for the old Miami train, and Mario Cristobal is driving it.
We invented the segment for Mario Cristobal. Like, the fact that it took 10 weeks or 11 weeks or whatever it is to get him on here is ridiculous, because we were workshopping things. It was like, well, we need something to make fun of this guy because he's going to mess up. And just poetic that Georgia Tech is able to kneel the ball out to beat Miami. Just this guy stinks. And look, it's fantastic for the program. They've turned things around, and they're going to continue to be a player in the NIL era. But Brad, what's the word I'm thinking? Is soft. That would be how I would describe the Miami Hurricanes. My donkey of the day, and I can't believe shouldn't even be a discussion. This is Mark Harlan at Utah. This is ridiculous. If you don't know, he's the athletic director. And if you didn't watch the game, the Holy War, which is always hotly contested between BYU and Utah, and these two sides hate each other. And it's one of the most fun rivalries in college football because there's genuine animosity amongst the schools, even the fans, the players. Like, nobody likes each other. BYU's rolling. Utah looks horrible. Utah is winning the game going in, and they haven't really allowed BYU to explode. And then there's a holding call here at the very end of the game. BYU is like within their own 15-yard line or 10-yard line or whatever it was. At the time, was it 3rd or 4th down on that one?
Oh, good question.
Honestly, I kind of blacked it out. But regardless, it doesn't matter. There's an obvious holding penalty. You can see it on the TV copy. You can see it on the All-22 copy. You can see it from the ref cam or any other angle you want to see. And Mark Harlan gets on here and says, this game was absolutely stolen from us. We were excited about being in the Big 12, but tonight I am not. We won this game. Someone else stole it from us. Very disappointed. I will talk to the commissioner. This was not fair from our team. I'm disgusted by the professionalism of the officiating crew tonight. Well, Mark, when you're talking to the commissioner of the Big 12, why don't you sit Whit down, Kyle Whittingham, and say, hey, why don't we try scoring in the first, third, or fourth quarter? You expected to beat a top 10 team in the country, scoring 21 points in the second quarter and then not moving the ball for 30 minutes? This is the official's fault? 21 points in the second quarter. They don't score another point the entire rest of the game. This is holding or no holding. Like, first of all, grow up, dude. You're an adult man. Okay? You're in a position of power. Like, you watch your mouth. And then secondly, you lost the game. You lost the game because you didn't score points, which is why Utah has lost a bunch of games so far this season. I can't believe that somebody would get up there and say these things. I wanted to be in the Big 12. Now I'm not so sure. You think the Pac will take him back?
Well, 2 things that I absolutely love from that statement, Tyson. How about, like you just said, I was super excited to join her. No, I'm not. Like, yeah. Like, what, dude? That's so funny. Like, that is hilarious. That's like the definition. All right, I'm out of here. That is so good. Then how about this? The Big 12 refs. We've all known the Big 12 refs are horrible. You're doing your due diligence about going to a new conference from the Pac-12, and you're not like, maybe we should look into the officiating that everybody in the sports world knows has the worst officials in the world in the Big 12 refs. Well, maybe the ACC, but they're just such a joke that I think they're just like a caricature of themselves. The Big 12 officials are actually awful. Like, they don't get anything right all the time. And this guy, it's just like, wait, really? Like, I thought they were the best. Oh, it's just too good.
Yeah, it's unfair to Kalani Sitake and BYU to like have this stain on the game. It shouldn't be the holy war anymore. It should be the holy war. And by the way, this guy comes from the Pac-12, which we all know Pac-12 after dark. You and I watched 99% of those games. They only got exciting because the officiating sucked and put one of the teams back in the game. This is how you built your name. Utah's been headhunting people in the Pacific Northwest now for 10 years, and all of a sudden it's an issue.
Ah, so good. That is awesome. All right, let's get into the last thing before we jump into playoff rankings.
Upset of the week.
And we touched on it. Georgia Tech beating Miami, and we'll put a bow on it. And, we took some pot shots at Mario Cristobal and all that good stuff. Tyson, I got to say, Georgia Tech now, they have their head coach, Brent Key, a better record, I believe, against top 10, a better winning percentage, I should say, against top 10 opponents than teams who aren't ranked or teams.
Well, does Florida State count?
Yeah, anymore. But I'm screwing this up. I literally had this, and now I'm messing up. I can't find it. Anyway, this is the new big game hunter. I mean, we got Jeff Brom, at Purdue, which was fun. Big game Brom. Now he's taking it to Louisville, and it feels a little bit like, all right, you were in a sleeping giant, so, God, how much can we give you credit for? This is sick. I mean, we got another one. Now they're in the ACC. You got to play. You got to go through them. And Tyson, they're lurking. They play Georgia every year. Imagine if Brent Key just beats Georgia randomly at the end of the year. Oh, man, this is awesome.
That would be electric. And it's fantastic that they're in the ACC because this is the conference who continually kind of puts out the most gettable good team. Like this year, it's Miami, and years past has been Clemson or Florida State last season with Jordan Travis. This is fantastic. And they play like there is no, we're not running Boise State trick plays and stuff to pull these things out. You know what we're doing. We're coming here. We're going to run the football, and we're going to dare you to stop it. And we might run a read option here and let Haynes King run for 100 yards. But that's on Mario Cristobal and the Miami Hurricanes to stop. That's on Dabo Swinney. That's on, whoever else. It's on Florida State. Stop. And these big programs show up, and they're just like, well, we're just going to beat them. Nuh-uh. You gotta be physical. You gotta pack your lunch. This is not your average 5-4 football team that you're walking into. It's similar in the way that I feel to Boston College, where they're worse than like a lot of teams in the country, but they're set up very well to beat some of these very pretty college football teams. Call them pretty.
And I will say, Tyson, Georgia Tech just did the country a service by beating Miami, because now the ACC should only get one team in. Because we're talking like, are they going to get three teams in if Clemson runs the table? Well, what if SMU beats Miami? Miami only has one loss. That would have been brutal. And we all know what would have happened. They would have get clowned. They would have get smoked. Maybe not Clemson so much, but I mean, Miami and SMU, and we love SMU. They're just not on the same level as some of these Big Ten teams. And you're going to take out that would have been brutal. So thank you, Georgia Tech. I think we can put the bed to some nonsense, because I'm not quite sure if these ACC teams are done losing. To be completely honest with you, still got a few more games. We got a few more L's we can be chalking up in the ACC. So Georgia Tech does us all a favor. I think it makes it a one-bid conference.
Bro, Miami ran for 88 yards. They have Damian Martinez.
Wow, yeah, not great. All right, Tyson, let's get into the exciting stuff. I'm pumped to get into this right now.
Biggest storylines.
And that, of course, is the new college football playoff rankings. Come out, second edition of the committee rankings here. Oregon stays at number 1. Ohio State now moves up to number 2. Texas 3. My Penn State Nittany Lions 4. My brother's Indiana Hoosiers 5, which is just sick. BYU survives. They stay at 6. Tennessee up to 7. Notre Dame 8. Miami down to 9. Alabama back in the top 10, of course. They just can never die. Ole Miss up to 11 now. They have a lifeline. Georgia drops to 12. Boise State, highest group of 5 ranked team, 13th. SMU 14th. Texas A&M 15th. Kansas State 16. Colorado 17. Washington State, shout out the Cougs, 18. Louisville silently up to 19th. Clemson hovering at 20. South Carolina, shout out Beamer, 21. Your LSU Tigers 22. Missouri, 23. And then how about Army 24 and Tulane 25 to round up the top 25 here?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, isn't it? When you can like read the whole thing and they all matter versus, we've got these 5 that can make the college football playoff.
Yeah, it's great. Like, because before we're just like, well, here's really the top 6. And now it's like, well, I mean, let's look. If this team loses, this team loses.
And that's a good spot to kind of get into it. We were talking before the show, and we'll dive into this whole thing here, but let's stick on the G5 teams right now. Boise State looks like they would be the one sitting here at 13 to get in to this college football playoff. But Army draws a tough end of the season here because they have to play Navy, who's still a good team despite losing to Rice and losing to Notre Dame, and then they have to play Notre Dame, which is a scary thing. And one loss, really, I mean, let's be honest, one loss is going to kill Army, and so it's kind of fruitless to say. Like if you want to bet Army to win the national championship, just bet them to beat Notre Dame because that's the only way that they're getting into this thing, anyways. But I feel like Tulane is really breathing down the back of Boise State. I know they're separated here in the rankings. Tulane has been awesome. They just bodied Temple. They won last week on Wednesday in a short week, and the offense looked good. Hughes is a great player. This program is rolling, and they're really exciting, Brad. And I know it's not a BCS Bowl system where the computer is entering in all these stats to tell you who they think is the best. These are human eyes. And Boise State has played close games, here and there, and they had another one last weekend. They won by 7, I think it was, and Genty goes off, and that's just kind of the way they run their game. If Tulane keeps beating people by 40, we're going to have an honest discussion. I think Boise State would have to lose in order for them to not get in the playoff. But the seed has been planted where Tulane will be that team from the G5. I think that steps up and takes it.
So I agree with you. Now, here's what I'm looking at. I got both schedules pulled up. So Tulane already has 2 losses, right? So they close here. They play Navy on the road. That's this weekend. That's a big game. They have to win. Then, Tyson, they get a bye before facing Memphis, which is huge for Tulane because, one more loss, Tulane's out, even if they win the American. So they have to finish undefeated. They have 2 losses. They win the conference. They're going to have a good shot. Now, I'm looking at Boise State. They're kind of potentially running on fumes here, man. I mean, they don't have a break. San Jose State, who that team can put up points, that should be interesting. I don't think
they only throw the ball to one player. So if you take him away,
shout out.
you can win a game.
But they got to go on the road, San Jose State. Then they got to go on the road to Laramie, Wyoming. Now, that team stinks, but late year with those wins, that is a tough place to play. And Boise State, Wyoming, that's like an old school rivalry too. So that's something to keep an eye on. Then they close with Oregon State. Now, that's not a good team in Oregon State, but it's 1 year removed from being a Power 4 team, Power 5 team. And those are 3 interesting games. Almost beat UNLV. Great point. So, and Boise State doesn't get a break. That to me it's kind of scary hours there for the Broncos.
Well, this is when we should just look around and say these new conferences are stupid and group SMU in with these guys because they deserve like they're in the same conversation. I know they're in a different conference, but come on. SMU is going to be left on the outside looking in. They've had a great season. Let's get into the top of this thing here, Brad. Is there any surprises for you? We'll really call it the top 6 here as we go Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Indiana, and BYU.
No, I think those are the right rankings. I mean, Oregon, Ohio State, 2 clear best teams to me. Texas, probably that second tier with Penn State and Indiana. I think Texas and Penn State are better than Indiana from a talent perspective, but the coaching edge, I think we can say it. Cignetti's probably a better coach than Sark and Franklin. So I think the top 5 is perfect. And based on resume, you have to put BYU ahead of Tennessee and Notre Dame.
Yeah,
so
they have to be there. Oh, sorry. The one thing, Brad, is I'm kind of looking through this, and we're recording. This thing came out like 15 minutes ago, so we're kind of figuring out as we go. They backloaded this top 12 with too many SEC schools for my liking. We just talked about Georgia doesn't have the juice to win a national championship. Ole Miss wins for sure. That's great for them. Are we all forgetting about when they lost to LSU or how they've looked at certain points throughout the season? Tennessee, I don't think is scaring anybody. They can make for some fantastic matchups and some really good TV for these college football playoffs. But I am more curious to see what happens with Notre Dame. And I think that they're going to get a boost because they're going to play a ranked Army team, and maybe they jump in. And because if Indiana or Ohio State losing is going to dictate this thing, they do play each other. Indiana loses, and they're going to tumble quite a bit more than what Ohio State would do unless the game is very close. And so I think that Notre Dame is kind of the sneaky potential bye spot here, Brett. And I'm saying they should make the playoffs after losing to Northern Illinois.
Well, I don't think Notre Dame can ever get a bye because they're not in the conference.
I forget the new rules all the time. I think you're right.
I think that's the case.
Right. Yes.
So let's jump into the projected bracket then, because I think that'll answer a little bit more. So right now, based on seeding, Oregon would get the bye as the number 1 overall seed. Texas would get a bye as the number 2 overall seed. Because remember, Ohio State, based on this, would have lost in the Big Ten championship, or they're the second-ranked Big Ten team or non-conference champion. So just keep that in mind. BYU would be the 3rd overall seed getting a bye, and Miami, highest-ranked ACC team. Let's just assume they win the ACC. They would be the 4th team with the bye at number 4. So then it would be the 6th seed Penn State, 5th seed Ohio State would be facing the top group of 5 team Boise State, who'd be the 12th seed. So they'd be the last one getting in. 6th seed Penn State would face the 11th seed Ole Miss. So another 2 at-large teams there in the Power 4 conferences. Another at-large here in the Big Ten. 7 Indiana facing number 10 Alabama. And then you get another at-large SEC team in Tennessee facing Notre Dame at 9. So to me, I think Notre Dame, the highest that they can go would be a 5th seed, technically,
5.
right?
Yeah, I guess. And we tried to figure this out before the season. We got all confused. Brad, one thing that I'll say here is we can talk about these potential matchups and buys and all of that stuff. Colorado is, like we've talked about this a handful of times, they are sitting in a premium position here to be able to steal this thing from BYU because they got their loss out of the way. Like, is Matt Rule year 2? It's early. Royal is the man, all this stuff. And close game against North Dakota State, but those are the bad boys of the FCS, and that was going to happen to anybody. But that was so long ago. And this team has grown so much that you can almost take those things off the resume and examine them from really like September, whatever, 15th, 20th, whatever it was, onward. I think Colorado is a really scary player here with the way this defense is looked.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And if you're looking at teams that are lurking mid to late, it is Colorado at 17. I mean, we could be looking at them. If they win the Big 12, Tyson, all of a sudden they're getting the bye, right? And then they're waiting and they're rested. And that's what you got to keep in mind here down as you're looking at this. Like, oh, LSU's toast, they're 22nd. Well, let's just say some of these other teams lose in the SEC. Well, all of a sudden LSU maybe competing for an SEC championship game. Oh, cool. They're right in there. How about South Carolina? Let's say they continue rolling. And it's like, oh, my God, they're 21st. They have no chance. Let's say they run the table. We got some other losses. They're competing in the SEC. They win. What do their seed look like? They have a bye all of a sudden. That's why I love this 12-team playoff, like from a macro perspective. I mean, like you said, before we were just like, oh, here's the top 6 or here's the top 7. That's really all I have to care about. We're talking about 1 through 25 now. Like Tulane could potentially be in as a 12 seed. They're ranked 25th. Army, same. If they beat Notre Dame all of a sudden's out. There's another at-large. So then can Army jump Boise State? Would Boise State now be an at-large team even if they don't win? Probably not. But do we get 2 group of 5 teams in the first ever CFP? That would be insane. Texas A&M. I mean, we're kind of an afterthought here. They're 15th. SMU, like you said, they only have 1 loss. It's the BYU, 6th-ranked team in the country. Like, this is where it gets super exciting.
It was when we thought BYU sucked.
It's when we thought BYU sucked. Right. So this is where it gets super exciting because we're going through all these scenarios and we'll have more games. Like, if SMU loses, they'll be out, obviously, right? 2 losses. They probably can't compete for the ACC championship. They'll probably be on the outside looking in. But I'm curious your thought here. We went through this last time. How many Big Ten teams do you think get in? How many SEC teams do you think get in?
So I'm not going to look at the deal because that's cheating. Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State are in. I think they're in for sure no matter what happens. I want Indiana to be in for sure. I don't know if they'll be in for sure, but I'm going to say 4 Big Ten. And then the SEC, we're going to have Texas, which is just a stupid sentence to say out loud. Texas for sure. I think Bama is going to dodge the SEC title game, which is going to put them in the college football playoff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think they're not going to have to show up to represent the West. And then Tennessee will get in. I'll say 3 SEC, 4 Big Ten. I'll say the group of 5 is Boise State. That's 8. Big 12 gets 1. ACC gets 1. Notre Dame. That puts me at 11. Because I don't see a way that there's 2 ACC teams. There could be 2 Big 12, depending on if the chips fall right for Kansas State or Colorado here, and BYU keeps the train rolling.
Yeah, I think if BYU loses in the Big 12 championship game to Colorado, they're both in.
Yeah.
Now, I do think there's a way that we get 2 ACC in, though, if it's Miami and Clemson. Clemson beats Miami. That's two lost teams.
Oh, gosh. That's a lot of moving and grooving, man. That feels like too much. I do think that the way this thing is set up right now, that's why I mentioned the kind of being backloaded with these SEC schools is like some of these guys just don't have to play a conference title game, and you're going to get rewarded for that with a trip to the College Football Playoff. Where, like, if Georgia gets bodied or whoever it is, Tennessee gets bodied there in the SEC title game, now you're out, and somebody who didn't have to play the game gets in. But that was a problem with the 14 playoff. It's going to be a problem with the 12. It'll be a problem with the 16, and that's the nature of these things.
For the second week in a row, I don't have a big issue.
They moved
with
Indiana up. They had some goddamn respect for an undefeated Big Ten team, and this is the worst game they've played all year, and that warranted 3 spots up.
Well, you're right. They're not necessarily. Well, there was a lot of losing that went on too.
That's true.
To be fair, but yeah, I mean, I'm on board, man. I mean, it's much harder to pick holes in it when we're like, well, we just got to wait a couple weeks and everything will solidify. Then it's like, this is crazy. How is this team 6 and this team's 12? Are you kidding me? You know what I mean? Because if you're 12, you're screwed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. And honestly, you could be screwed at 12 in these rankings.
And speaking of a 12 team, let's get into like our only preview that we're doing this week, because this is not a great weekend of football.
Playbook preview.
So number 7, Tennessee goes to face number 12, Georgia. I really have no clue how this thing's going to go down because both these teams are 2 teams that we just cannot get a read on. But I've said this before, but this is a playoff eliminator to me. Georgia can't get in with 3 losses. I don't care if Kirby Smart cries about it. And then Tennessee, if they lose this game, ties, they're just not going to look good enough.
They got to be buried, man.
They have to be. So this is a true playoff eliminator here, which is exciting, right? Like people are like, well, these regular season games don't mean as much now because of the 12-team playoff. Like, what are you talking about? These are huge games every weekend. Like you have to, like LSU Bama, that was a playoff eliminator. Now we said there's a chance that LSU, it's a long shot. I mean, they're pretty much dead. But this to me, for sure, Georgia loses, they're done. Tennessee loses, they're done.
Yeah, and this is a weird game because never in my life did I think that we'd be going into a Tennessee-Georgia game saying, well, Tennessee's got the better defense, and that's going to help them out here as they go to Sanford Stadium. Georgia hasn't had the craziest home field advantage really at all over this run here. They've just been better than everybody else, so I think you can kind of throw that out the window a little bit here. It's going to be on Tennessee's offense because I think I can tell you what we're going to get from Georgia, and that's going to be short drives that end in turnovers, like over and over and over again. They haven't had a long, sustained, drive outside of like a handful a game that end in points, and that's a death knell against a team like Tennessee, who I think wants to run the football and play defense, which is where Georgia normally is, and why I back Georgia in all of these games, because college football has shown me over and over and over again, you can run the prettiest spread offense in the world. It's about being physical and running the football, and Tennessee does that better than Georgia right now.
Yeah, this is super interesting because it's like Nico, they said he's going to play. He missed precautionary, and it's Mississippi State. Like, okay.
Kind of like,
yeah. But at the same time, Nico's still missing wide open guys, man. And the backup came in and he kind of slung it a little bit. I still think you need to beat Georgia. You need the 5-star guy. Like, I hate always bringing it back to Penn State, but when it's, when Drew Aller went out and they brought in now Bo Prabula, and it was like, whoa, this offense just runs so much better. I'm like, yeah, because he's the backup. Like that's, you're not prepared for him, and he's just doing different things or simplifying things. But to beat Ohio State, you can't have Bo Prabula. You need the 5-star kid Drew Aller. I think that's what we're looking for here.
Not throwing the football. And that could be a way for Tennessee to win this game here, is just if you establish the run, Georgia has shown themselves to be susceptible to be hitting over the top on this defense. And it's a ton of 5-star guys in the back end and blue chippers and future NFL players. But they have been lazy at some points during the season as far as like assignments and gap integrity on the rush. And if Nico can find the time, because this is the thing I think that bothers us the most about Nico, at least for me. We were kind of sold this like off-platform, out-of-the-pocket creator that is just fantastic. And it feels like when the pocket moves, he gets a little worse and things kind of shrink and the windows get smaller and he's still trying to fit it in. So if they can maintain the pocket and let him have time to throw, they can find some of those big hitters. Georgia also just needs to run the piss out the football. And they've refused to do it. And whether it's refusal to do it because they want to show off Carson Beck and these toys that they have, or it's because they can't, because they couldn't against Florida and they couldn't really against Texas when the game started to get close, and they couldn't against Alabama. It's a tough deal because I'm still looking at this like Georgia is a way more talented football team,
right?
And I just don't think they have the horses here.
Wow. Okay, so so Georgia eliminated. You think Tennessee's going to win?
So. I think so.
Right. I think Tennessee's going to win too, and that means Georgia's going to roll. So
yeah, they're going to win 40.
But Tyson, Mac is back. Maction is happening Tuesdays, Wednesdays, earlier in the week. You know what that means, folks. We're gambling.
Yeah, we got the Discord. The group name, as I said what I said. The link is in the bio or in the description here. Just go ahead, click it. We'll let you right in. We've got some guys on just crazy heaters in the NFL. Like people can't miss. Some of us are throwing long shot parlays in there, trying to get rich. College basketball is back. The NBA is back. The NHL is up and running. And if you can find a book that'll let you bet where Juan Soto is going to go in free agency, show us that play too. We got every different channel you could think of. UFC 309 is next Saturday with John Jones and Stipe Miocic. That would be a good one as well. So, whatever you're playing, we want to hear about it. Tail us, fade us, doesn't matter.
And like, subscribe, and share the show. Smash that like button on the way out if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening to podcast form, maybe get a little comment, a little 5-star review, whatever the case you can do. It does help us out, so we do appreciate the support. Stay subscribed so you don't miss a single thing that comes your way, because we got a ton of content. We've had a ton of content for you this football season. We'll continue to keep grinding till the season ends, and share the show with a friend, maybe with an enemy. Doesn't matter to us. We'll be back later in the week, our gambling episodes, trying to get hot. I think we kind of figured out a little bit in the NFL. Tyson, we'll recap that, and we'll get our college bets as well. So we'll talk to y'all later in the week. Till then, guys, peace.